Hello, YouTube. How's it going? All doing? Come on into the Bible study stream. We're welcoming believers and non-believers alike, and try to learn a little something about the Bible. This is only the second time I've done this ever, both on stream as well as doing this sort of thing, just in general. So I will do my best to be accurate to the word and all that stuff, and do my best to answer questions, which everyone is free to ask. And yeah, I think. Let's see, let me make sure that everything's set up correctly on YouTube as well. It should be, but okay, yeah. So we'll be doing that. And yeah, also, as a side note before we get started, I would appreciate if you guys could keep my mom in your thoughts and prayers, because even though she's not in critical condition by any means, she's been going through a lot of, like, it's kind of strange, but it's like a lot of, like, nausea and, like, bowel issues, just all sorts of unfun stuff. So and it's just been kind of like in and out for the past like couple weeks, so we're not really sure what's going on, but yeah, I'd appreciate thoughts and prayers on that. But yeah, let's jump into the Bible study here. So I got the layout here. It's very soon, thank you. So boom, got the layout. I got it on its own OBS like scene thingy-majig now, so you don't have to see me fiddle around with all the crap and whatnot. Trying to set it up, and yeah, I got in terms of notes, I mean, I still got like almost 3 entire pages of notes on this chapter, but there hasn't been as much, I think, that has stood out to me in terms of like super big points here, but I think it's been a very good chapter nonetheless. So what I like to do, for those of you who are new and joining in, is I like to just kind of read through the whole chapter and then kind of go like section by section, and I kind of just talk about stuff based on what I have in my notes, because I spent like an hour and a half yesterday just doing research on this chapter. And yeah, of course, anyone wants to throw in questions or whatever, feel free to ask. So I will state here, just in case, so that I can remember it for when, if and when it does happen. This is not like, even though it's fine to have debate, like discussion and debates, this isn't like streamer defends the Bible. So like, if you have like a topic that's gonna take more than like, or like, it's not, is it more about just reading the Bible and not having this like big political discussion about having these like super complex topics, if that makes any sense? Like, I don't want to discourage just like questions and disagreements, but like you know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to like have this big like debate just over, you know, is God real? Like, that's not the point. I don't know, just trying to set the tone a little bit better. I kind of butchered that, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, it doesn't want to end up in a 12-hour debate if God or a like higher power exists. Yeah, exactly. But I still welcome believers and non-believers alike. But yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's read through this. So yeah, we're in Mark 2. This is one of the 4 Gospels, and trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to preface before we get started. I don't think so, so let's just start reading. A few days later, or actually, sorry, real quick, I wanted to point out this is NIV translation for those who care about translations. A few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. They had gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door, and he preached the word to them. Some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it, and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. And Jesus saw their faith. He said to the paralyzed man, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Sorry. The gospel, because I haven't done RE in ages. I'm not totally sure on what RE is standing for, but the gospels are just the 4 books of the Bible: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that talk about story of Jesus, religious education. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Gospels, so that it's just Jesus's ministry, and it's like 4 perspectives basically on the same ministry kind of thing. Yeah. Let's see, verse 6. Now some teachers of the law were sitting there, thinking to themselves, "Why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone?" Immediately Jesus knew in his spirit that this was what they were thinking in their hearts, and he said to them, "Why are you thinking these things? Which is easier to say to this paralyzed man, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up, take your mat, and walk'? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the man, "I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home." He got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, "We have never seen anything like this." Once again, Jesus went out beside the lake. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. As he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," Jesus told him. Levi got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. The teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors. They asked his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said to them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. Some people came and asked Jesus, "How is it that John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees are fasting, but yours are not?" Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom fast while he is with them? They cannot, so long as they have him with them. But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and on that day they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. Otherwise the new piece will pull away from the old, making the tear worse. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins." One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples walked along. Or as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" He answered, Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave some to his companions. And he said to them, "The Sabbath was made for man, not for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." So there you go. That's Mark 2. And then, yeah, like I said, I got some notes for these sections, and actually managed to get some notes on all of it, because I think, unlike chapter 1 of Mark, I feel like there's not as many sections to go through, or as many complicated things, but yeah, if we start off with first section here, so Jesus forgiving paralyzed man of his sins and healing him. The first one that I actually caught my eye is, like, why does it say that Jesus, like, came home? Because it says, like, you know, the people heard that Jesus, had come home, but isn't it Jesus from Nazareth or of Nazareth? So I always thought that was kind of strange. But then I did I was doing some research on that, and I'm gonna be also bringing up other parts of the Bible, because if you've seen anything about Bible like teachings and stuff, they like to cross-reference because that helps support points. So we got Matthew chapter 4, and specifically verses 12 and 13. Check that. Okay, yeah, there. So this reads, when Jesus heard that John had been put in prison, he withdrew to Galilee. Leaving Nazareth, he went and lived in Capernaum, which was by the lake in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali. This last bit here is Zebulun and Naphtali are just kind of like two different tribes of Israel. Kind of the whole discussion about that with like the promised land and all that crazy stuff. A little outside the scope of what we're talking about, but what it indicates, and the point of it all, is that after John the Baptist, which is the one that's being talked about here, was arrested, Jesus basically, or like just effectively moves from Nazareth to Capernaum. And if you kind of like look at the Gospels from kind of a wider scope, you can see that that's kind of where Jesus sort of has his base of operations. So that's why it says he came home here, instead of that being in Nazareth, for example. And that's more of like a logistical question, but I think it's a good way to start it. Next is the significance of the healing of the paralyzed man, because this already in the book of Mark, we've seen parts where Jesus is healing a lot of people and casting out demons, all these like big miracles, and then there's this where it's just this one guy is like singled out. And it's important not just because Jesus has the power to forgive sins. I mean, that's important as well, but it's also like this whole miracle of healing the paralyzed man is done in front of the Pharisees and the religious leaders. So to back up a little bit, for those who may not quite remember who the Pharisees are and stuff, they were also in this time period, there's Rome, right? And they've basically conquered Israel, and so they sort of own it, and we'll get into that more with the tax collector stuff. But because of that, or during this period as well, there is the religious teachers, the Pharisees, and there's like the high priest and stuff, and so that's like Israel still has its religious leadership, but they're just being oppressed by Rome, right? And so the Pharisees are essentially, they're like one sect of the religious teachers, because they're all divided up and it gets all messy and stuff, but they believe basically in the entire Old Testament, and I don't see it in here, but there's other parts of the Gospels and stuff where they mention the Sadducees, and those guys only believe in like the first 5 books pretty much, at least when it comes to like theological points, if you will. So there's conflict amongst, there's factions and like division and conflict, drama, all that stuff, and it's kind of stupid, but the point is that they are the ones who are charged with leading the Jewish people, like, spiritually, making sure that they're staying true to God and obeying God's word, all that stuff. And so and all that to say, it's very important that Jesus does this miracle in front of them, particularly with the fact that he forgives the man's sin. And you can see why it's such a big deal to them in verse 7, where they say, "Why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins by God alone?" And so this whole point here is showing that Jesus is from God, and that Jesus is the Son of Man, which is kind of this title for I'm blanking a little bit here, but basically indicating that Jesus is the Messiah, right? And then cited verses 9 through 12. I'm trying to remember if there was a point of it that I was wanting to do. I guess there's the fact that Jesus is like, which is easier to say this one thing or to say this other thing. And not only does Jesus say both things, but both things actually happen, which just kind of helps demonstrate his authority. And we talked about authority last week, but that's kind of like showing that Jesus is the source, so essentially kind of reaffirming his connection with God and all that sort of complicated stuff that comes with that. I hope that made sense. I feel like I kind of was a little sloppy in explaining that, but yeah, let's see. Next, I got some notes on this section, Jesus calling Levi and eating with sinners. First of all, why is it Levi? Because if you know a bit about the Bible, you might remember that the tax collector that Jesus calls is named Matthew, not Levi. And so we see this guy named Levi in both the book of Mark here, as well as the Gospel of Luke. But in the Gospel of Matthew, the tax collector guy that Jesus calls is Matthew. And John, the Gospel of John doesn't even mention Matthew or Levi at all. Or at least not Matthew. I'm pretty sure not Levi. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But either way, John's kind of rude. I don't like him because he doesn't mention guy who has the same name as me. But anyways, let's see. But yeah, so this is actually kind of like, it's a bit of like a scholarly debate on like, okay, is Levi and Matthew actually the same guy, or is it two different tax collectors? Some people argue that it's two different people. But I actually fall under the camp that is kind of, I guess, the more widely accepted camp, maybe. That Levi and Matthew are the same person, and it's also not the only instance of like there being multiple names for the same person in the Bible. So the biggest one is Simon, who gets renamed to Peter by Jesus, and that one's a bit more explicit in the text, as it will, there's like, at least some of the Gospels literally say like Jesus quoted said like, "You are Simon, but I call you Peter," or something like that. And also there's a different like variation of Peter that is Cephas. Like the name is Cephas, but that's in like a different like Greek versus Hebrew or something. I didn't write down the notes on that for the details of it, but there's also Thomas, who's another one of the apostles. In some of the Gospels, he's named Didymus. And then as well as like Thaddeus, who again is another one of the disciples. He's in Luke, I think he's called Judas, son of James. So it's kind of a little confusing that there's multiple people that have different names, it seems like. But at least with Simon being renamed to Peter, we can kind of get an idea that probably there is this idea of like kind of adopting this new name after meeting Jesus, kind of like sort of taking on a new identity in Christ kind of a deal. And so, of course, with Levi being also called Matthew, that could have just simply been a nickname as well. There is, but again, there is that theory that it was like an intentional name change for like that kind of like separation of like before he met Jesus and after. And then let's see, oh, also, just want to point out, I skipped over this in my notes, but in Luke chapter 6, which is one of the Gospels where it's called Levi, the name Matthew is listed among the apostles, because in Luke chapter 6, it like lists off all the 12 apostles, and Matthew is one that is named, but not Levi, even though Levi is the name given to the tax collector in basically the scene that plays out again in Luke. That kind of also causes a bit of that confusion, but I also think it would also be weird that Jesus calls this guy who's named Levi and then there's just Matthew who shows up, but I don't know, that part's just more of like a gut feeling. But you can see the confusion there. That's kind of where I'm trying to get at, is that it's very confusing, and there's some things that point to them being the same person, and there's some good reasons behind it. There's also the meaning behind the name Matthew, which is very significant, and I have quite a few notes on. So the name Matthew means gift of God, right? Which is a very powerful name to give to a tax collector, because again, we're gonna go into some like historical context here. Tax collectors, not only are tax collectors not really super well liked in general, like I don't imagine any of us here are like super fond of the IRS, like people trying to like and going through tax season and all that stuff. But the tax collectors of the time in the Bible here were arguably even worse because of two main reasons. One is that they were it was Jewish tax collectors collecting taxes for Rome from other Jewish people. So the tax collectors were viewed very much as traitors, because it's like, hey, you're working for the enemy, right? Like, we are people oppressed by Rome, and you're actually helping them, like, drain us of money kind of thing. But then, on top of that, a lot of the tax collectors were known for, actually kind of, like, cheating and kind of abusing their power to get more money out of the Jewish like citizens than like they were supposed to get, which I think might also lead to the stereotype with Jewish people being like greedy or whatever, unfortunately. But it was like an actual like commonality that was going on with tax collectors. And so for like, it kind of creates this interesting contrast where the common Jewish citizen hated Matthew because he was a tax collector, but Jesus still considered Matthew to be a treasure, right? Or like a gift. So I don't know, I just think that there's a lot of like power in that. Kind of like, you know, kind of, I guess, kind of demonstrating how Jesus cares for sinners. And I mean, like, you know, we read it in verse 17 here, where he's like, not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Not come to call the righteous, but sinners. It's like Matthew was one of those. And then, actually, that kind of transitions pretty well into the next part of this section that I was going to talk about, which is like, what is really the significance of Jesus eating with the tax collectors and sinners? Actually, bullet point in my notes has me call or bring up my own physical Bible, which is an NIV translation. But the nice part about it is that it's a study Bible, so there's a bunch of like notes and whatnot in it. So if I flip over to Mark chapter 2, because one thing that I noticed in the notes, notice in the note, is how it points out how Matthew, upon meeting Jesus and receiving like the good news, which, you know, his resurrection and all that stuff, or like Jesus's life, he immediately goes to share this with his tax collector friends, like almost immediately. And see if there's yeah, I like this part that it says here. So it says in the note, some may question whether a person so new and immature in his faith should be telling his story to others. But the account here illustrates the truth that our spiritual lives are strengthened when we share the good news of God's love with others, no matter the extent of our knowledge, skill, or experience. And so, I honestly, in a way, kind of can see that as, like, a similar thing to myself, in that, like, I kind of view what I'm doing here as part of, like, you know, because, like, over the past couple of years, I've been, like, growing in my faith spiritually, you know? Like, a lot. Because, like, and I just kind of see doing this Bible study as kind of the next step towards, like, my own spiritual growth. Like, you know, for example, like, years ago, if I was streaming, I wouldn't, like, I would say I was a Christian, and I had the Christian tag in, like, my streams and stuff, which I still do, but, like, I would never talk about it, because I was scared, hopeless about, like, getting hate for it, right? And I've actually gotten, not too much, but I have gotten occasional bits of hate in my shorts on YouTube where I talk about theological stuff, so, but it's also kind of I kind of surprised myself in the fact that I just kind of find it funny when people do it, because it like, at least the instances of hate that I have gotten, it's very, like, it comes off to me as over-the-top kind of hate stuff, so, I don't know, it's just interesting how, like, you know, people change and how, like, how things, like, seem different once you're, like, stronger in your faith and stuff like that. But anyways, that's a lot of tangential stuff. Going back to text here. I think yeah, another point with this section, and I promise I won't spend too much more time on it, but is how the tax collectors are singled out from the umbrella term of sinners. I find very interesting. For example, here, where the Pharisees are like, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? It's not just, why does he eat with sinners? It's like, tax collectors too? What the heck? And, I think it kind of circles back to how the tax collectors were viewed as traitors by everyone, but then also, again, that idea that it was common knowledge that tax collectors would cheat the Jewish people out of more money, is kind of, like, really telling. And I actually got a I think I got a first second from in Luke chapter 19. Oh yeah, so this is actually a pretty good point, to support the fact that people did in fact know about this. So in this part, Jesus goes to Jericho, and there's a guy named Zacchaeus who's a chief tax collector and was very wealthy. And he ends up talking to Jesus, and in verse 8 it says, Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I'll pay back 4 times the amount. So there he's kind of like acknowledging sort of that fact that um like cheating like people out of money is kind of a commonality. Looks like I also have, let's see if this is really, I have another verse right in my notes. I just want to double check what it is. It kind of does, but I won't bring it up because it's a little tangential. But yeah, so like the tax collectors, not only were they like sinners because they cheated people out of money, but they're also viewed as betrayers because, again, of working for Rome and stuff. So it's kind of like a double whammy. Whereas the sinners, it's like, oh, they're just, you know, they're not obeying the law, right? But the tax collectors, not only are they not obeying the law, but they're also actively working against us, right? And so it's a very like, you know, us versus them kind of perspective. And so it's kind of, all this goes to emphasize how, like, why they single out the tax collectors, because they're considered worse than just a sinner, basically. But Jesus saw them among those who needed to be spiritually healed. And I like that Jesus here says, when he's talking about it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick, I'm not come to call the righteous, but sinners. And now, there are other parts of the Bible where Jesus will say, like, differentiate sinners and tax collectors in completely different contexts, but I like that here it's put as just sinners, because he doesn't really see them differently in terms of, like, the fact that they still need God, right? So that's just what I like from that part. Let's see. So then got this section here about fasting. And the first point about this that I got is what exactly is Jesus talking about in verses 19 and 20 when he talks about the bridegroom and all this stuff? Like, what's he talking about? Right? So if we read it again, Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom fast while he is with them? Cannot, so long as they have him with them. For the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and on that day they will fast." So, first of all, it might be a little on the obvious side, it might not be, but Jesus here is kind of speaking symbolically and emphasize, or saying basically that he himself is the bridegroom or the groom, and that like we as kind of like you know, God's chosen people are the bride. And so he's saying that you know, because they're with me, why do they need to fast? They, you know, I'm here, it's a time of joy, right? But there will be a day when I will taken away, alluding to his crucifixion, and then like on that day they'll fast. But this kind of symbology of the groom and the bride is actually pretty common in the Bible. I have several verses that I can reference off. Isaiah chapter 54 verses 5 and 6, Hosea chapter 2 verses 16 as well as 19 through 20, John chapter 3 verse 29, and so on. And then even in Ephesians, which is after the Gospels, chapter 5 verses 25 through 32, that kind of I think that section is more about kind of likening the marriage that like a man and a woman on earth would have to Christ and the church. But it again, like this kind of symbology is not like unique or kind of like unheard of, I guess, in the Bible. And then again, yeah, what is fasting? So that's pretty much the act of abstaining from something, most commonly food, but it can be not food related, to demonstrate to God the seriousness of our devotion to Him. So it's essentially a more extreme form of prayer. Like we're saying, like, God, I am serious about wanting to, you know, closer to you, or wanting to understand you better, kind of that sort of stuff. And so it's saying, like, I'm going to intentionally, like, abstain from X or Y thing and to, like, focus more on you. So, like, one of my brothers, about a month or two ago, or probably 2 or 3 months ago, actually, he did a week-long fast of solids. So he just didn't eat any solid food. And so, you know, it doesn't have to be so extreme where you're like, I'm going to literally eat nothing for an entire week or something like that. You don't have to do anything extreme for it. It's just like this act of devoting or like trying to show your devotion. And again, it's nothing required. Like in the Jewish law, or it's also known as the Mosaic law, it's basically kind of the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's like the Mosaic law that the Pharisees would have been running under. In that there was a dedicated day for the Jewish people to fast called the Day of Atonement, but even then fasting was voluntary otherwise, and considered more of this like tradition for the religious leaders, and just a very common thing for very like the very devout Jewish people. But here Jesus is saying, like, you don't, like, with a wedding, because he's bringing up a wedding. At a wedding, you don't, like, fast during that, unless you're, like, you know, have to medically for some reason, but you're not really doing it voluntarily. And, you know, the Lord, Jesus, is saying, like, I'm here, it's a time to celebrate and enjoy being, like, with God, basically. And, like, it's not a time to mourn, which is kind of what fasting is about. So that's why he kind of uses this symbology of the bridegroom and, like, this wedding kind of theme. But then onto the next point, like, why does like what's going on with the unshrunk cloth, this old garment, and the wineskin stuff? And I guess kind of establish some facts here. Sewing a, like, fresh piece of cloth onto an old garment does in fact make the problem worse if that garment is then washed afterwards, because cloth obviously shrinks when you wash it. And so if you line it up so that the cloth is going to be all perfect to cover the tear, and then you sew it up, and then you throw it in the wash, it's going to shrink and pull at the part, like the you know, the ropes, or not the ropes, but, you know, it's going to like pull at the old garment and make the problem worse. And the wineskin, that's also just an actual, like, factual thing. When you're making wine, the new wine, it tends to expand, and this isn't a science lesson on how wine works, but it expands. And so you put it into a new wineskin, because that skin is fine. It can expand with the wine as it, like, does its whole chemical processing or whatever. But old wineskin, that's already expanded and has lost its, like, elasticity. So when you put new wine into it, the wineskin's gonna freaking pop like a balloon, because it just can't, like, contain it, right? And so both of these kind of parables, or like symbols, are talking about Jesus's ministry, and how the new covenant, or like, you know, this whole like new law that he's kind of bringing in, it's not going to be compatible with the old way of doing things, such as like, you know, the Mosaic law. It's not going to really work too well with it, and that's okay, because as we read on in later parts of the Gospels, the old law is fulfilled in Jesus, so it's able to allow for the new covenant to kind of come in. And that gets into a bit more of these like technical religious terms, but I guess I'll try to put it in a simpler way. Basically, Jesus is coming to fulfill the old way of doing things so that the new way of doing things, like, you know, such as, you know, if you believe in Christ, accept them as your Lord and Savior, you are saved kind of thing, like opening the way for that stuff to come in. And that stuff isn't compatible with the old stuff because the old stuff doesn't really work that way, so Jesus is clearing that so that the new law and new stuff. Hope that makes sense. And yeah, I like to yap a lot during these, so if you have any questions or like need me to repeat something again, please let me know. Moving on to the last section, which is the Sabbath. This is another bit of like a technical thing. So first of all, what is Jesus talking about with the man, or that man was not made for the Sabbath? Like this part here. So, first of all, the Sabbath is a day of rest. That's just kind of what it means. But this whole part here where the Pharisees are on him, it's like, hey, this, you know, they're picking heads of grain. That's not lawful on the Sabbath. It's because it was considered work, and so, like, you know, it's like, oh, the Sabbath is a day of rest. You're not supposed to work on the day, on the Sabbath. But this is actually, part of the sort of like tacked on sort of like, rules or like interpretations that the Pharisees had, that sort of kind of turned the Sabbath into this like legalistic, like, burden, really, where it's, you know, it makes things harder just for the sake of being like trying to be all holy and all super hyper accurate to everything, and like taking everything like over analyzing things, right? And so Jesus is here, he's trying to correct them and be like, hey, it's not that like intense, okay? Like humanity is not made to have a day of like not being allowed to do anything, of being forced to do absolutely nothing whatsoever. It's just the Sabbath was trying to emphasize the Israelites back in like the old law when it was originally introduced. It's just like, hey, make sure there's a day where you're actually just resting your body and like, you know, giving yourself time to recover for the next week of work. So it was more about emphasizing just having rest rather than an absence of work, if that makes sense, or an absence of labor. And then again, we see this part where Jesus brings up the phrase "Son of Man." So what is, like, you know, how serious is this that he says, so the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath? Again, this is kind of him reasserting that authority and such that he has. Looks like I didn't bring up the write down the verse for it, but there's a part where it's kind of clear that God was the one who established the Sabbath, because, you know, the word came from God to Moses, and Moses then like or God gave the law to Moses, and Moses was like, here's how or here it is. And so no human being, like no priest or anything, can take authority over what God has established, because it's, you know, God's the highest in the hierarchy of like authority in church and stuff. But with Jesus claiming authority over the Sabbath by saying the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath, and this is Jesus basically asserting again that he is God, which again, Pharisees don't like that. And that leads to the next point, and my final point is, why are the Pharisees so against Jesus? Because if you're not super familiar with the Bible, this can seem kind of like a little weird, in that it's just like, yeah, they kind of don't agree with him on things, but it's like Pharisees just really do not like him, and we're gonna see that get more extreme in the next few chapters. But it's like, religious teachers just keep butting heads with Jesus on these things. And, you know, so the question is why? Well, the Pharisees were indeed hoping for a Messiah, and in fact, like, all the Jewish people were hoping for that, because, you know, there's Rome. Like, they're being oppressed by Rome, right? And the words Messiah and Christ are both words that mean anointed one in different languages. So basically the Pharisees, their expectation of who the Messiah or who the Christ was going to be a king, because the kings were the one anointed by God, right? So they thought that God was going to send this, you know, new kingdom and like overthrow Rome, establish a new kingdom of the line of King David, you know, this like amazing thing, this amazing glorious thing. And Jesus is like flying in the face of that. Like, it's like very different. And the teachings that Jesus brought was also like completely different. Like, you know, Jesus is coming to focus on spiritual salvation, not necessarily physical salvation. And, you know, Jesus, his whole thing is that he came to die for our sins. The Pharisees don't get that. They're like, where's our, you know, leader to free ourselves from the oppression of Rome? But then it also kind of stirred some like jealousy and fear among the Pharisees and the religious leaders, because again, Jesus is asserting himself as God, you know, a higher authority than them. And oh, this is the part with Moses that I was trying to allude to earlier that I was kind of messing up on. So Moses had been given special authority to establish the old law, because Moses was so well connected to God. And there is this idea of the prophet, which is prophesied in Deuteronomy 18. Yes, that is fulfilled, like that prophecy is fulfilled in. So verse 15, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me, Moses talking, from among you, from your fellow Israelites. You must listen to him. And then in 17:19, the Lord said to me, what they say is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their fellow Israelites, and I will put my words in his mouth. He will tell them everything I command him. I myself will call to account anyone who does not listen to my words that the prophet speaks in my name. So this is part, like, this is a prophecy that they know that there's going to be this prophet guy coming, and actually I think there's something about like the Pharisees believing that the Messiah and the prophet would be two separate people, so that's also kind of why Jesus clashes with them, because he's one and the same. But regardless, it's like Jesus is asserting a level of authority and influence that is greater than the priests had, and so that scares him, right? And so that's why they're like all this to say is like they're so against Jesus because, you know, he's not what they expected. He's actually the opposite of what they expected. His teachings kind of conflict with their understanding of the Bible, and Jesus is also asserting himself to be God, which threatens their power and their like really just their like understanding of the world. Really, like it's kind of like completely different than what they understood things to be. So, yeah, that's the last thing. That's the last point I have. So, I hope that all this made sense, and then you guys enjoyed it. Maybe learned something from it. Maybe realized, hey, maybe this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't know. But yeah, I'm gonna drink some water because I just talked for like an hour straight and did nothing else. But yeah, that being said, that's like the end of the like Bible study portion of this. Okay, again, if anyone has any questions or comments or whatever, please, if you've been sitting on a question and you're not sure if you should ask it or not, please just like go ahead and ask it. Like I'm open to questions. But of course, if you don't have any questions, don't feel like you have to force out a question. Okay. Yeah, let's transitioning here shortly. So I'm gonna swap back to here. And yeah, I think next up we're gonna be doing a alright, so yeah, next week we'll be doing Mark chapter 3, which I haven't actually looked at what if there's any crazy interesting stories on that. We see the 12 apostles, and Matthew shows up in that, so I couldn't back to that part. Ooh, that's gonna be an interesting part. I will just read off the section header of Jesus is accused by his family and by teachers of the law. That's an interesting. But again, that'll be just. Yeah. Oh, all right, we did it. And yeah, I can show off. Well, there's my Firefox landing page, but this is all my notes. See all my notes here. I wrote a lot of notes and references and stuff, but anyways. Back to the link. Back to here. It's definitely very fun to do this stuff because it I don't know, it just helps me like get into the word more and try to like wrap my head around like all the details, because there's just like so much with the New Testament, and it's something that's kind of weird too, because like I know for me growing up, because I grew up in a Christian home, and I always felt like there was this point during my teenage years where I was just like, man, the Bible is the Bible, it's always the same stories, right? Like there's nothing new. But it's like when you actually dig into it, even if you just read the chapter normally, like when I was getting back into my own faith more, I was kind of like, I would just read the chapter just to like try to get myself into the habit of doing it. And even then it was like, I was able to find new like little meanings and lessons that I hadn't picked out before. And then thinking at a different angle like this, where it's not just, I'm not just reading it by myself and, you know, being like, oh, I thought this was interesting, I'll write it down in my little journal. It's like, no, I'm actually thinking like, okay, what are some points I can talk about to try to help you guys and anyone who watches this, you know, in the future or whatever, like try to help you guys like understand the word more and maybe find something that, or like learn something that you didn't realize before, or you know, that kind of stuff. And so it's just been like, I don't know, just super interesting to see how I'm like constantly learning new things out of the Bible. Like that whole thing between Levi and Matthew, I always thought was weird, but I never looked into it or researched it. And like, you know, even something like the bridegroom stuff that Jesus talks about in verses 19 and 20, like just trying to understand that. Oh, excuse me. Trying to understand all that and like figure out like, okay, how is Jesus using this analogy to try to make his point? It's just like a very interesting thing to do. Okay, yeah, so we're going to be moving into a something that's a little bit more fun. And it is going to be a Bible character tier list. So yeah, right over here. So yeah, we got our Bible character tier list. So I got this whole thing here. I'm going to tweak this, so this is the God tier. We just put God and all of his adjacent things there. And then down here we're gonna be putting from hell itself and putting the bad guys in that tier. And then the rest of this, okay, this is gonna be more of just like an opinion tier list of like what I think of these guys, right? Like these weirdos, who are they, and are they actually good? So this is gonna be the awesome tier list, or the awesome tier. That's good. They're fine tier list. Overrated tier list. Pretty bad dude tier list, or tier. I keep saying tier list. It's just tiers. Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good. Those are some good tiers there. So like, obviously, God's gonna be in his own tier because it's God. Like, there's certain characters here that we will kind of just be forced to put them into a certain tier because of obvious reasons, but and that's gonna mostly just be up here and down here. But then we got the awesome tier. These are the Bible characters who I think are just really cool. They got a lot going on to them, and they're just very iconic. Good tier is just like they're pretty solid characters. They're not like super memorable or super iconic per se, but they're not bad. The fine one is just kind of the middling characters. This is probably honestly where I'm gonna put the characters that I don't know very well. Because I don't know all the Bible characters. Actually, let me just put the row down here of like the IDK, or that I don't know them. Alright, I don't remember them. Or I don't know them. There we go. I don't them. I don't know them. There we go. Just put that in, I guess. Just so that it kind of separates itself out from that. Like, they're not bad, I just don't know the character very well. That's gonna happen with some of them. And then there's the overrated tier. These are characters that I don't think are very good. Are overrated / boring. There you go. Like, there's kind of characters that are just kind of there. They're not actually that interesting in my opinion. And then pretty bad dude tier. These are pretty bad dudes. Enough said. Okay, so let's start with the ones that have required tiers. So I can see this one here. Satan, he goes from hell itself, or into hell itself. Obvious answer, or obvious reason there. Antichrist, same thing. He's basically the same guy. False prophet, that's the same thing. He's literally the same guy. And then I think that's it for all the bad guys, or at least the super bad guys. Okay, so we got and then gonna be a little bit of stretch here. We got God and God tier. I don't think this comes to anyone's surprise. And then we got Jesus and God tier. I also don't think that comes as a surprise. And then I think I saw I saw the Holy Spirit in here somewhere. This looks like it's alphabetical, but except for some of it. Never mind, it's not alphabetical at all. Okay, I'm not seeing the Holy Spirit right now. If the Holy Spirit shows up, praise God. But also we're gonna be throwing him into that tier. Yeah, I can't find it. Okay, so we're starting off with Isaac. Okay, so Isaac is he's one of the 3 patriarchs, and he's also, let me change the title on YouTube. No, I think the title on YouTube, yeah, I'll just keep it. Okay, so Isaac, yeah, again, he's one of the 3 patriarchs. So there's like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Isaac's the one in the middle. I think, hold on, let me just separate its own thing. I think Isaac is the one who had to work for Rachel and stuff like that. Is that the right person? Oh, okay, no, that's Jacob. Okay. Okay, so yeah, Isaac. What does Isaac do in the Bible? What is he known for? I keep forgetting. And I think that's kind of why he's not gonna be in these top 2 tiers, because I literally like can't remember it. Like he's more important. His birth is more important than his actual life. That's a little obtuse, but like it's like the stuff that happens around Isaac is much more interesting than Isaac himself, right? Because he doesn't really do a whole ton. Like his whole thing is that Abraham and Sarah, who are his parents, they give birth to him when they are super old, like 90-ish years old, or like 100 years old or something like that. And so, and it's like there's all this stuff with the promise, you know, like God promising they will have kids, and then, you know, Abraham messes up and he tries to basically force it to happen, and then that results in Hagar's the concubine of Abraham, but what's the kid's name? I don't remember. But it's like there's all that stuff there, and then we get to Isaac eventually. Man, he doesn't really have a whole ton, and there's stories with him and Jacob when Isaac's old and all that, but I don't know, he's kind of boring. He's kind of just a boring dude. He doesn't really do a whole lot. So I don't know, that's kind of where I'm putting him at. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. We got Jacob. So this is the Isaac's son. We were just talking about Isaac. And so Jacob's one of the patriarchs. He's also the guy who gets renamed to Israel. And he has the 12 sons, who end up being the name, like the 12 tribes of Israel. So on top of all of that, Jacob wrestles with God. There's literally a story, like this picture here is him wrestling God right there. And he gets, like, he almost beats God, but God has to, well, he probably doesn't get even close to beating God, but like, he for the sake of selling the story, he almost beats God, but then God has to break his hip. And so it's like, Jacob's awesome, right? He's going up into the awesome tier. Jacob's a really interesting character. He's got a lot of cool stuff. The only thing that kind of holds him back is he was foolish enough to fall for, what's the guy's name? The Laban, that's his name. Um, he got tricked into working for that guy for 14 years in order to marry the girl that he liked. So you know that's kind of an oof moment, but he's still a really cool character. Let's see. Then there's Esau. So, Esau is Jacob's brother. I almost got Esau confused with Cain, by the way. That's why I was like hesitating. For some reason I thought he was Cain from like the Cain and Abel story. We'll get to that later, but no, this is Esau, Jacob's brother. Esau is kind of an idiot. If you know the Bible at all, the main story he is known for is him getting tricked by Jacob into giving away his birthright for a bowl of soup. Or stew, excuse me. It's so much better than soup. He gets a bowl of stew. But yeah, he's an idiot. That being said, he does come back later, and he's actually pretty chill, if I remember correctly. I don't know what tier do I put this guy in? Just like his iconic defining moment is him being a complete moron. And then to top it off, Jacob tricks Esau again. This time more so tricking Isaac than Esau, but like Jacob is completely subverting Esau by doing this, where he tricks Isaac into thinking that he's Esau when he's actually Jacob, and giving him the his blessing, right? Like the blessing that's given to the firstborn son, which is like this huge deal, super significant thing. And then Esau just kind of gets pwned by that, and he's just like, "Oh, I can't fix it. So sorry, dude." Does not do anything else in the Bible. Oh yeah, and then there's also the fact that he was married pagan women, which is kind of an oof. Oh, I have another tab open up just to remind myself of other stuff he did. He actually, his descendants became the Edomites. Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna say he's, I don't know, he's fine. He's an idiot, but he doesn't really do a whole lot. Like, I don't know. And plus, like, even though he kind of messes up a lot, he's not like this blatantly evil person. He's just stupid. You know, like and I mean, you can even see in his picture here, he's a hunter, dude. It's like he's more the physical, like if he was born today, he would have been a football player probably. So like, he's not the smart guy. He's the strong guy. So like, it makes sense that he's stupid. And yeah. Let's see. Then we got to Laban. Oh, so okay, we mentioned it. I mentioned it earlier with Jacob and how he tricks Jacob into working for him for 14 years in order to get 2 of his daughters. It was supposed to be 1, but then he doubled it so that he could actually get the second one that was supposed to be the first one, but then he tricked Jacob. It's a whole story. Does Laban do anything else though? I don't think so. I think he just does that. Oh wait, no, am I thinking of someone else? Wait, hold on, it's talking about... Or no, never mind, I'm not getting confused by ChatGPT or whatever the heck, or the Google AI. Being stupid. So that's actually interesting. Apparently, according to Google AI, In traditional rabbinic literature, Laban is depicted as the ultimate arch enemy of Israel. Even though it points out right after, Pharaoh was the one who tried to kill the Hebrew male babies, which we'll get to in a bit, but apparently Laban's the evil one. Yeah, he's kind of just, he kind of just tricks people the whole time. He's kind of a bad dude. It's gonna be kind of weird to put him up with some of these other guys that we're gonna get to, but he's not really a nice guy in any way, so... let's see, and then we get to Rebecca. Let's see. She was the wife of Isaac. Okay. Yeah, she's fine, I guess. She doesn't really do a whole lot in the Bible. She's just kind of like... That's kind of one of the unfortunate things with the Bible, is that not a lot of women. There are some women who do a lot of stuff, but not a lot of women do stuff in the Bible. Next we get to Joseph. I think Joseph is a little overrated, but I'm gonna put him in the good tier because there is a lot of cool stuff he does. Namely, him being like the second in command of all of Egypt and saving the like known world at the time from a famine. That part's pretty cool. But yeah, he's kind of an annoying dweeb as a kid. So, and then there's like, I don't know, just a lot of little things about him that kind of are annoying to me, and I'm just particularly not interested in myself. He's very much like a vision guy, like he gets a lot of visions and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. He's not bad by any means. He's not like super awesome, like iconic dude. Moses, we have to put him in the awesome tier. He literally parts the Red Sea. I mean, God does it, but you know, through among a whole bunch of other stuff that Moses does. Moses is extremely important to the Bible. It kind of feels like we have to put him here. On the flip side, Pharaoh, we kind of have to put here because, again, he's a pretty bad dude. He, as we mentioned with Laban, Pharaoh was the one who was basically Moses' opponent, and Pharaoh tried to, or had all of the Hebrew newborn like sons just freaking like killed at one point. And then he wouldn't let the Israelites go, and then he did after getting 10 plagues pounded on top of him. And then even after that, he was like, no, actually I changed my mind, I'm gonna hunt you down and kill you now. And then he eventually dies, but like he's just like a super villain. Not modern day pharaohs, obviously. We're talking about, or is there even modern day pharaohs? What form of government does Egypt have? I don't know the world. But yeah, I don't know, kind of a crazy dude. Aaron, okay, so this is Moses's brother. I kind of think Aaron is kind of boring. He's a boring character who's also not very helpful in like a lot of situations. I mean, there's literally the part in Exodus where Moses goes up onto Mount Sinai. Is it? He goes up on a mountain to talk with God for 40 days as he's like getting all the stuff for the Mosaic Law, as talked about during the Bible study. And during that time, the Israelites are being stupid, and they're like, oh man, Moses is taking a while, maybe he's dead up there, we should just like start worshiping some other stuff. Aaron, can you make us some like golden pigs, please? And Aaron's like, okay. And he does it, and it's like, what is he doing? I mean, I get that, like, I'm probably simplifying it, and it's probably actually like, I don't know, they probably like threatened to kill him or something like that. I don't know. But it's just like, dude did not stand up for his younger brother and for God. And it's just like, man, it is cool that he became like the first high priest and started the whole lineage of priesthood stuff. So I respect him for that, but I don't think he's very cool. Joshua. Joshua is actually going in the awesome tier. Because primarily because of one thing. I mean, obviously him leading the Israelites into the promised land and leading the fight against all the Canaanite nations and all that stuff is really cool. But there's one specific chapter in the book of Joshua that is like iconic in my brain, where Joshua basically demands God to keep the sun up until he and the Israelites have defeated his army, and so the sun stays up for like straight up like a 24-hour period or something crazy like that. Well, let me see. Bible story. Yeah, chapter 10. The sun stands still. So, yeah. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. That's in verse 13. So, yeah. It's pretty cool. Like, he just does this, and it happens, and they defeat the army that they're going up against. I think it's the... Excuse me. It's the 5 kings of the Amorites going up against. So not only is he keeping the sun up for a whole day, he fights 5 armies essentially, or like 5 kings, right? It's pretty crazy. Let's see, Rahab. I feel like I remember this person, but the name is like, oh, okay. She's the girl who's in, so she appears in the book of Joshua, and it's during these 2 spies who, two Israelite spies who, like, sneak into the city, and then they're being, like, hunted, and then Rahab kind of protects them, keeps them in her home, and then helps them escape, kind of thing. I kind of am thinking about putting her in one of these 2 tiers. I think I'm gonna put her in the good tier because it's just kind of cool. How this person who was a prostitute kind of had this like big like change type of thing. Plus it was like I guess a reading here as a scarlet cord, but like that whole thing is kind of like an iconic moment, I feel like. And then yeah, she gets her and her family are spared because of that. So yeah, I don't know, cool character. I could probably put her in the fine tier, but I'm gonna put her in the good tier just because it's pretty cool. Deborah. She is one of the judges, I think. And I'm kind of a little biased because that's my mom's name. And where I'm gonna place her, but yeah, so she's one of the judges in the book of Judges, which were essentially kind of like sort of the equivalent of like the religious leaders at the time, not in the same way that it is in the New Testament per se, but kind of in a way. But yeah, there's this whole story where she works with this other dude to defend Israel, I think. yeah, Barak. He, like, so Israel's been getting pummeled by these Canaanite guys, and Deborah and Barak work together to rally an army in order to fight against the Canaanites. It's pretty cool. I'm gonna put in the good tier. The story's not like super awesome, but it is cool. I like it a lot. Gideon. Gideon is actually overrated, dude. Gideon is hecka overrated. He's also kind of insane because I think there's a part later on where he tries to, like, after his iconic moment, which is, you know, being like afraid to lead this army to defeat Israelites of enemy, and then, you know, lays down the fleece and is like, says to God, like, hey, don't, like, you know, if you want me to do this, have the dew in the morning go on everything on the ground except the fleece, and then that happens, and then the next day he's like, okay, do it the opposite way where the dew is only on the fleece, and then that happens, and then, like, you know, eventually he wins the fight with, like, pretty smart tactics. That's the only cool thing he does, really. And then there's a part later on where he tries to convince, they're like fighting an army, and they get like this sorry, hold on. A text message. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm just checking to see if it was my mom. Again, she's been not feeling well, but anyways, so they fight this army, right? And they get like the commander of the enemy army down or whatever, and Gideon tries to force his son, who's like a kid, to execute this guy. I know that kind of came out of nowhere, but that's also how it does it in the book, like, in the Bible. Like, it's just like, whoa, like, why in the world? Pretty sure that, yeah, tries to command his firstborn to execute these guys, and it's just like utterly crazy. and there might be some like context to it that actually makes it okay or whatever, but I just think it's just like, whoa, you don't do that, man. And then otherwise he's not actually that good of a person, unfortunately. But and then we get to Samson. I would put Samson up here because he's so freaking strong and cool, but he also is such an idiot. He's kind of an Esau, but like even actually kind of cool. But I don't know, because like he keeps like Samson does so many things wrong, and I could do like a whole like stream talking about it. But yeah, he's does so many things wrong. He does do right in his final moments, and it's a very cool moment that kind of redeems him, as you can kind of see here. A little hard to maybe tell what's going on, but he like pushes these two pillars, and then it kind of brings the whole building down on him and a bunch of the like his oppressors or something. I can't remember exactly who it is, but it's the bad guys, right? So he kind of just nukes the whole area, at the cost of also nuking himself. So he's cool. He's just like not quite there. Ruth is the next person. She is I think the only, probably not the only one. Yeah, definitely not the only one, but one of the only women in the Bible to get a whole book based around her. And her story is kind of interesting. And I mean, she's kind of important because a lot of stuff that, oh wait, no, am I thinking of someone else? I think I might be thinking of someone else. No, she's, oh, okay, never mind. This is with her and Boaz. I was thinking of the one chick who is like has to marry the weird evil king guy and stop stuff from happening. Trying to see if she shows up in this list here. Esther, that's who I was thinking of. Ruth is okay. She's actually pretty good. I think Ruth is good. She's not amazing, but her story's good. It's not flashy by any means, but I like it. It's a nice, like, wholesome story and everything. So yeah. Hannah, I think, is yeah, Samuel's mother. Right? I'm thinking of this one. Yeah, okay. It's fine. I don't know. I mean, she's not a bad character. She just, like, doesn't really do a whole lot again. It's not really her fault. It's just, like, I don't know. She's not, doesn't stand out as this, like, super, like, interesting character with a lot of, like, cool stories or moments to tell about. It's just, like, she was being bullied by, she was one of two wives of this dude. The other guy, or the other wife, was bullying her because she wasn't having any kids, and having kids was particularly important at the time. And so then she prays to God, and then she is granted a son and dedicates him to being basically a priest. And so Samuel is really cool, and we have Hannah to thank for that, but, like, Hannah herself isn't a super interesting character. Eli. Eli work in this again? I'm blanking on this guy. Oh, yeah, this is the... Okay, so this is the guy who mentors Samuel. Yeah, this guy's kind of, I would almost put him in the pretty bad dude tier, actually. But I think he just goes into the overrated tier. Because this guy is so fucking lame. Like, the dude has hit, like, so there's Samuel, right, who he mentors and basically raises from childhood as, like, an adoptive child type of deal. And he does great with that because Samuel's a super awesome character. But then Eli has biological children who become priests, and those guys pretty much, like, horribly abuse their power in, like, the worst way possible, from, like, exploiting people in pretty much multiple ways, and to, like, just stealing stuff, and it's just, like, super crazy. And Eli gets called out for letting it happen because Eli doesn't do a whole lot to stop them, and then Eli never does anything. And then he gets killed. Or no, well, he doesn't get killed, he just dies because his kid, or both of his sons, the bad kids, they get murdered, and then he gets so heartbroken, which admittedly that would be devastating, right? They both die on the same day, and, like, you're really old. They die before you. That would be devastating, but he gets so devastated that he falls off his chair and just dies. And it's like, man had such an unfortunate, like, lame, or, like, such a humiliating death, and the guy wasn't even, like, that amazing. Samuel, he's awesome. Awesome tier. He's just, I mean, he's Samuel. You know, the book 1st and 2nd Samuel, they're about this dude. Not totally about him, mostly 1st Samuel is about him. 2nd Samuel is more of David? Yes, because we get into Saul stuff. Yeah. Samuel, prophet, I think he's technically the last. Does he even count as one of the judges? I don't know, but he's a really good character. I like him a lot. He's not as flashy as these other three here, but he's really good. Saul, he's a pretty bad dude. yeah, I mean, if you know anything about the Old Testament, you probably know Saul. Um, really bad dude. He was the first king of Israel, and screwed up his opportunity like horribly, and became super paranoid, causing all these problems for David when David became the anointed one. And he was also doing some, excuse me, some bad stuff before that. He's a pretty bad dude. Yeah, he's bad. Jonathan. Jonathan is... he's good. If there was like an underrated tier, I would actually probably put him in there. Because, so he's Saul's son, but he's also David's friend, and he's like a pretty good dude. I think there's one moment in the Bible where he does something really questionable. Something to do with meat. And like it's like unclean meat or something, and like it's okay to eat it when obviously it's not. Let me see if I can find this. Also, it's Jonathan. It's supposed to be Jonathan. A instead of an O right there. But, oh, yep, okay. So it's in I believe 1 Samuel chapter 14. Yeah, so it's in 1 Samuel chapter 14, and there's this like battle going on, and Saul, who's the king at the time, he kind of declares this thing that the whole army is not allowed to eat until the battle is over, and Jonathan essentially breaks that, eating a little bit to try to recoup himself, and then he gets found out about it, and yeah, he's almost killed, but then he gets saved from it. There's something other than that. But anyways, yeah, he's a good character. Adam's fine. He doesn't really do a whole lot. He kind of blunders with, you know, sort of being part of the Garden of Eden thing, and you know, the fall. But I don't know. I don't want to say that he's like a bad dude or that he's overrated or boring because of it. You know what I mean? Like, he's the first person. You know, he's the first man, first human. I don't know. King David. If I wanted to be like, you know, try to get clicks and whatever, I would put David here, but I can't deny David's awesome. King David, he's awesome. Enough said. I'd almost actually put him up, and like, if there was like an upper tier, I would put him in that, like, between God and awesome. Yeah, he's a good dude. Give the Holy Spirit up here. Hello, person to ban. Maybe? I don't know. Okay, next up is Goliath. I mean, he kind of has to go in the pretty bad dude tier, for obvious reasons, but at the same time, he's kind of he's kind of overrated, because he just kind of, I don't know, he kind of verbally bullies Israel for a while, being like, oh, what you gonna do, Israel? I'm so big and strong. Do you think you can beat me? And then he gets freaking hit by a rock and instantly dies. So, I don't know, dude. Like, he's not that cool or that intimidating, really. He just gets freaking boned. But, I mean, obviously, he's very good for, like, the theological lesson of the story, but in terms of the character himself, It ain't it, bro. It ain't it. Solomon. So this is King David's son. I don't actually know about him too much. Where would I put him? I guess I would probably put him in the good tier. Like, he's not bad. He just doesn't stand out as much as David, I think. I mean, there's some parts about him that are really iconic, right? Like how knowledgeable he is and like asking God for wisdom when he's like allowed to ask for anything is pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. He just doesn't do a whole lot. Like, he's not like a ton of these like big moments. He does build the temple though. Or get the temple built or whatever. So that's pretty cool. But it kind of counterbalances a little bit with the fact that he had like 700 wives and 300 concubines. Just because he could. I don't know, man. It's Solomon for you. I don't know what to tell you. Elijah, S tier character. The most iconic moment I think is actually being depicted in this picture of him where he's going up against the prophets of Baal, I think it is. And he's like, okay, we're gonna have sacrifices on our altar. Like, you know, I'm gonna have one sacrifice on altar. You're gonna have another one. We're gonna see who can make their god like light it up. You know, like God do it instead of, you know, lighting a match or whatever. And so the Baal prophets are going all crazy about it, trying to make it happen. Nothing works for like several hours. And then Elijah's like, okay, let's pour some water on the sacrifice, and then let's follow it up with putting some more water, and let's put some let's do it a third time. Let's put some more water on it, and then do it, God, and then just boom, and it hits and lights it up, and it just like, it's a super pwn moment, dude. So yeah, it's pretty iconic. Hey Gabe, how's it going? I think Solomon is more good at, or he's good at the start but more bad at the end. I'm trying to think. Oh wait, no, we're talking about Solomon. Yeah, I would agree. I think that's kind of why he isn't in the awesome tier for me, is because if I remember correctly, he doesn't end off amazingly, but he's pretty good at the start. Elisha, I hate to do this, but I haven't read this part of the Bible too much. I'm gonna put him in the I don't know them tier because I don't really know him that much or what he does. Jezebel. I know Jezebel. It's pretty bad, dude. Or dudette in this case. She's like the iconic like queen of evil type of character. So I know that much. Ahab. I don't remember Ahab very much. Ahab in the Bible. Yeah, I know he's a wicked king. I just, yeah, I'm not familiar with his stories enough to really give a take on this dude. Nehemiah, same thing. I don't really remember much of him at all. Okay, Eve. Where do we put Eve on the tier list? Because she was the one that, like, you know, got tricked by Satan initially, and then kind of was unintentionally, like, involved in tricking Adam as well. Not that Satan needed to do that, but, you know, it didn't hurt Satan's side of things. I don't know why I'm phrasing it like this. I don't know. Like, she's not intentionally bad. Like, she's not evil like Jezebel is, but at the same time, she's not good at all. Like, I guess I would just put her in the boring category. She doesn't really do a whole lot. She just kind of gets tricked, and that's the iconic moment. I don't know where else to put her. That would make sense. Okay, Esther. Where do we put Esther in here? She's another female who gets her own Bible, or a book of the Bible. She gets her entire Bible. No. Yeah, that's called the feminist edition. No, so Esther gets a book in the Bible dedicated to her story. And is it with Haman? Who remember the name of the guy? Haman in the Bible. No, it's okay, Haman. Okay, no, I'm getting confused here. So Haman is essentially the bad guy for Esther's story. Which just kind of automatically puts him into the pretty bad dude thing. He wanted to basically pull a pharaoh on the entire population of the Jewish people. Okay, Esther. I mean, I can't deny she's I feel like she's a little bit on the overrated side, but I can't justify putting her in the awesome tier. She's gonna go in the good tier, because it's just not, like, it's not that cool, you know? I don't want to seem like I'm sexist, but it's just not that cool. Mordecai, on the other hand, he's fine. Kind of there. Kind of does stuff, you know. Not bad by any means. He's just not, like... He helps out in quite a bit, but it's not like... I mean, the whole book of Esther's not this, like, superhero plot in, like, the flashy sense, so it's kind of like... It's hard to put them in the awesome tier, you know, when they don't do these cool things. Okay, Job. Where do we put Job? This man got a whole book of the Bible about his life sucking. That's pretty much everything that happened to. Like, everything goes wrong. I mean, I want to a little bit put him in here because I haven't read his book of the Bible recently by any means, but I get the gist of it. I don't know, I guess I'll put him in the fine tier. He's not... I wouldn't say it's just necessarily boring, it's just not like... It's more about just kind of the... I don't know, it's about this whole story of, like, when everything's taken away from you, how do you deal with it kind of thing, and, like, sort of wrestling with all that stuff. So it's not necessarily anything, like, super flashy, again, but it's still, like, good. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's where I'll put Job for now. Isaiah? Okay, I hate to be that guy, but Isaiah and Jeremiah are kind of also going in here. I just haven't read their stuff enough to really say anything about these two guys. Daniel? I go with... Yeah, I'm going with it. Daniel's overrated, guys. It's not that cool to sit in a lion's den, alright? It's not that cool. It's not flashy. It's not, like, super awesome. It's just, like, a fine thing that he did. That's actually where I would put him, though. Like, now that the bit's over, I actually put him in that, too. I think I do. He's not, like... He's got the writing on the wall thing, though. Like, the literal writing on the wall thing during the... Was it Nebuchadnezzar? Which is our next character. Man, I don't know him that much. Yeah, actually, I think I would put Daniel in the good tier. He's a fine character. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar. What? Try to think of him. He's a villain, right? So he would probably just go into here, and then we could call it a day. But he's got some interesting stories to him. I guess I would kind of just put him in this tier, though. But Wait, okay, isn't there the story where he... How do you spell this guy's name? I can't even see it on the thingamajig of him. Okay. Nebuchadnezzar, isn't there the whole story with the pig? Something like that? Or, yeah, he eats grass. Yeah, doesn't he go, like, insane? Like, actually insane? Something like that? Yeah! Okay, that's an interesting story. So, if we're basing this tier list off of the interestingness of the character, goes crazy and crawls like a beast, yes. I kind of have to put him in an upper tier because that's just such an interesting part of what happens to him. You know what, screw it. I'm putting him in the awesome tier. That's an awesome thing to, like, have your, like, happen to your villain, where he gets, like, he gets punished by just literally becoming insane. And, like, humiliating himself like that. Like, that's such an interesting thing to happen to his character. I don't know. It's weird to put him up here, but it's just such an interesting part. Plus, I mean, he sets up cool stories for Daniel and our next trio of characters who are all put into one thing: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who are definitely going in the overrated tier. Like, one of the most overrated Bible stories ever. Not even, like, joking on this one. It's like, they have this one story where they're put into the fiery furnace, and that's all cool and fine and everything, but then there's nothing ever about them ever again. Just like, okay. Okay. Jonah. Where do we put Jonah? I'm actually going to... Okay, again, we're kind of going off of... This tier list is a little messy because we got, like, morality tiers, like, down here, and this one up here, but then there's, like, intrigue tiers here. But I'm gonna put Jonah down here because he does actively want a entire, like, city of people to perish. That's kind of bad, and he gets mad at God, like, both about that and about a vine that was being used as his shade. So, yeah, he's kind of, in a way, like where you mentioned with Solomon earlier, where he's, like, good in some parts and bad in other parts, except Jonah is mostly just that bad with, like, a little bit of good. I don't know if this is crazy to put him in this tier or not. Let's see, Cain. Yeah, I mean, the Cain's pretty obvious one. Pretty bad dude. Killed his brother. Like, enough said. Moving on to the next one. Okay, Mary. I assume since this one over here is Mary Magdalene, that we're talking about, like, Jesus' mother, Mary. She's fine. It's not like... I mean, she doesn't do anything, like, super iconic, per se. She just... So it's not like, you know, this, like, super awesome, cool character, but she's not bad in any way. Like, it's kind of a normal character. Same thing with Joseph. Like, he's fine. He's actually kind of boring. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of put him here. He's kind of just a boring character. Nothing really happens. He's kind of there. But, you know, they're neither of them are bad characters by any means. Paul. Paul's a pretty good character. I'm trying to think if there's anything that stands out about this guy. Well, I mean, he was called Saul, and he was about as evil as the other Saul was, if not more so. But then he kind of had a 180 shift in his character arc. I'd put him on the awesome tier. He's pretty cool. Yeah, like his his whole story himself, and then the like how much he contributes to the New Testament, and like basically writing the like majority of the second half of the New Testament, is pretty awesome as well. Okay, John the Baptist. Not gonna lie, I'm kind of feeling like I should put him into here because I feel like he's kind of overrated, but at the same time, he's also pretty good. I'm gonna put him in the fine tier. I think that's the safe bet. All right, I already had a couple of hot takes with some of these characters. I think it's safe to just put him in the fine tier. Doesn't do anything super crazy, but he's pretty good. And he's pretty important to the Bible and everything. Pilot. He's a bad dude, but he's also kind of overrated. I'm just gonna put him in the bad dude tier. Like, dude kind of was like, I don't know, he's put in this awkward position, but then he kind of makes everything a lot more awkward for himself, because he's the guy who is like given Jesus by the Pharisees, and the Pharisees are like, please kill this guy. And he's just like, I don't know why, but okay. And that's kind of his story, is that he doesn't really know why they want to kill him, because he thinks that Jesus is like mostly fine. I think, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but or of any of these characters' stories. But I think that's basically what happens with him. And then we got Judas. I mean, okay. There's a idea in my head. There was a thought in my head to put him down here, but I can't put him that low. He's not like, right? We don't put him in here, right? He's just a guy who made like the worst decision you possibly could, but he's not literally the devil. And then the guy feels so bad about it that he offs him. Like, I mean, like, he's a horrible person, but at the same time, he also felt so bad about it that he, you know, I don't know. How do you rank this guy in a tier list like this? I don't know. I'm gonna just put him there because it kind of makes sense in my brain that you would put him in the tier where he's just a villain kind of guy and he's not a good person, than putting him in the part where it's like literally from hell. So I don't know. Steven. He's fine. He kind of doesn't do a whole lot in the Bible and dies immediately, but you know, he's fine. I don't know, he's a little boring, but I'll put him here. Timothy. I don't really know much about him as like a character per se, because like I know he's like Paul's I guess we could call him Paul's disciple, or like his student, I guess, or kind of like his, I don't know, there's like a student-teacher type of relationship between Timothy and Paul. But beyond that, I don't really know much about him. Silas, I don't know anything, like hardly anything about this guy. I know he shows up in the New Testament, but that's about it. Abel, I mean, he's kind of a boring dude. The most interesting part about him is this picture of him right here, where he's going like this to try to defend an attack that's coming from over here. Kind of going the wrong side of it, but you know, whatever. He's just kind of boring. All right, Mary Magdalene. Where do we put this character on the tier list? Good question. I think I would put her in the fine tier, Because it's just like, again, it's kind of a similar thing to the other Mary, where it's just that there's not really a whole lot going on to make it like a standout character per se. Okay, since I feel like some of these characters are a little bit more interesting than others to talk about, I'm gonna hop over to the right side of this tier list, or of the remaining characters. So we're gonna hop over to Sarah. I think Sarah is kind of a boring character. Not really a whole lot happens. She has a moment where she's kind of, or a couple of moments that are bad, and then doesn't really do a whole lot else. Kind of feels like kind of there to be there. I don't know. Lot's kind of an idiot. What I don't think I would put Lot here though, because he's not that bad. He's just stupid. He's just really, really stupid. He's like Esau. He's really stupid. I guess he's fine. I don't know if anyone has any opinions on that. Please let me know, because I'm not sure on this guy. Yeah, I don't know. Kinda. I don't know how to think about him. I wouldn't say he's boring or overrated. I wouldn't say that. He's involved in some very interesting stories, but I just think that the character, like, the kind of, again, he's an idiot. Like, he's just stupid. Let's see, Abraham. He's definitely going up into one of these two tiers. Does he go into the awesome tier, though? Trying to think of, like, iconic moments with him. I think he kind of just goes into the good tier. Like, he's not... I don't know, I mean, he's the first of the three patriarchs. That's kind of a standout point. And then he's got some interesting stories with, like, you know, when all the stuff involving trying to bear a son, or like have a son, and you know, God, or like him almost sacrificing his son because he told by God, but then God was like, "Hold up, you know, your faith is proven," kind of thing. Here's a ram. I'm butchering the story horribly, but kind of the idea. So there's some interesting stories. I just don't think he does anything like super duper iconic like a lot of these other characters up in the awesome tier. Noah. He's kinda in the same boat, no pun intended. Actually, pun very intended, but I think there's also a story with him after the flood stuff is resolved, where he like gets drunken, and then his he has three sons, and one of them sees him like naked in his tent, goes to tell his brothers about it, and then the two other brothers go into the tent walking backwards to put a blanket over him. And it's like, I don't really remember there's a whole lot else to that story other than that. Excuse me. But that's not like a super interesting story. It's kind of just that, as far as I remember. So I'm not sure. Let's see, Elizabeth. I believe Elizabeth is the mother of John the Baptist? Yes. Okay. Same boat, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think Elizabeth is kind of in the fine tier. Actually, I'm gonna put her in the boring tier, because she just doesn't really do a whole lot. She's not, even though the Bible is a book and not a film, she doesn't really get a whole lot of screen time. So it's kind of just like not a whole lot really to her. Zacharias, who I'm pretty sure is the father of John the Baptist. I'll just check on that. Google search is confusing me. Alp, is Zacharias the father of John the Baptist? We agree on this, right? That's the thing. Or is he somebody else? Because if he is John the Baptist's father, I know which tier I'm putting him in, but Zechariah, did they just misspell it on the picture? They might have misspelled it on the picture. The picture does show a priestly looking dude, like, in awe before a, excuse me, an angel. So I believe that this is the Zechariah in the Bible, who's Elizabeth's husband and John the Baptist's father. I believe so. Okay. So we're gonna assume that because it doesn't make sense for it to be any other character. I'm gonna put him in the good tier because even though he's not like super iconic per se as like Abraham or Daniel or Solomon are, he's got this very interesting moment to him where because he doubted the angel of the Lord, and because the angel of the Lord shows up to him and gives him this prophecy, and he doubts it, and then he's like literally muted or like silenced for, I think it's the rest, or until John the Baptist is born, and then he like then he's like not using the writing thing, he's like, his name is John, and then like boom, he's able to speak again. So I think that part's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, next we get to John, and this is the disciple John and not John the Baptist. He is pretty cool because he beat Peter to the tomb. No, so I think he's trying to actually think of like character. Well, okay, he writes the Gospel of John, obviously, and then he writes like 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and then Revelation, I believe is like portfolio, for like a better term. So he writes some pretty important books in the Bible. And like, the Gospel of John is like one of the, I would probably say, is one of the more read and like quoted Gospels of the Bible. Certainly probably one of the more one of the more read and quoted books of the Bible, just generally speaking, but I think the Gospel of John is just pretty iconic that way. And I mean, he was one of the disciples, so that's pretty cool. John, run, Peter snailed. Exactly. Herod, he's got to finish out the pretty bad dude tier, because he's a pretty bad dude. He tried to basically have Jesus killed as a baby, so that's not cool. And then we finally get to Peter. I like his picture. An old man with a big old beard. Peter's awesome too. So, I mean, for one, he wrote 1st and 2nd Peter, I believe, right? I'm not actually sure on that, but he's also like essentially the leader of the 12 disciples, or like the main one, or whatever. He's very important, is basically the and so there's that, and then there's some really good stories with him in the Bible, like him walking on water with Jesus, And just being very faithful and just a very iconic person in the Bible. Let's see, yeah, so would I change anything? Do any last minute changes on this tier list? If anyone else has any thoughts on this tier list, let me know. But I think it's good, actually. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with this as my tier list. Yeah. I don't know. There you go, chat. There's the Bible character tier list. Again, it's all my opinion. And just how I think of the characters in terms of, like, how much I enjoy them and stuff. I mean, obviously we got the pretty bad dudes down here. Yeah. Yeah, that's... I don't know, I'm blanking on a transition to end off our stream today because I didn't have anything else planned for stream today. But yeah, I thought there was the Holy Spirit in this as well, like as like one of these like little character thingy-majigs, but I guess not, so. Yeah, it's funny some of these pictures where like Cain and Abel have this same picture here, two of them, and then Samuel and Eli also have the same image. But I mean, it kind of works. But yeah, and Goliath and Nebuchadnezzar, the only like antagonists in the Bible who really made it out of the pretty bad dude or hell tier, or at least the ones that I know of. There's obviously these guys down here. Yeah, okay, that was fun. I actually really enjoyed doing that. It's kind of fun to just talk about characters and rank them and stuff. Wonder about the Holy Spirit. Yeah, obviously the Holy Spirit would go up here with God and Jesus. I don't know why it wasn't in this thingamajig. Maybe if I can find a better one elsewhere. But yeah. Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Oh, there's another one that has some more characters, but including the Holy Spirit, but I don't want to have to do this whole thing again. It actually takes out some characters too, I think. Anyways. Yeah. Oh, I enjoyed doing that. I hope you guys did as well. Yeah, it's all I got for today's stream. So, also, I was gonna say something and then I completely blinked on it. So, I'm just gonna transition to the end of the stream here. So yeah, you guys want to check out more of what I do, you can follow the links. Copy and paste this for YouTube chat as well. But yeah, we'll be starting up on who's my favorite Bible character? That's a good question, actually. I think I would probably have to go with Joshua, primarily because of the whole thing where he forces the sun to sit in the sky for a whole 24-hour period. Like, that's pretty cool. And I don't know, I just kind of there's still that part of me that really enjoys the more action-y parts of the Bible, and so Joshua stands out more because of that. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, so we'll be doing Bible study on Mark 3 next week. Next week at 7. And in between, on Thursday, I'll be starting up Hollow Knight Silk Song, so look out for that, because I'm really excited to start up that game. And yeah, I think that's all I got, so I'm gonna end the stream off on YouTube here, and then I think we might try to, I don't know if there's anyone else streaming in this category, but I might try to raid out to somebody. Tactical? I don't know the person who's doing it, but they, quite sure about them. I'm a little intimidated by them, so maybe we won't raid out, but, well, I'll end up the stream over on YouTube, so, thank you guys so much for watching over on YouTube, and I'll see you all on Thursday, or next week on Sunday. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.